The Atlas has made it possible for different museums to work together on projects across the nation, and so we're actually all photographing and digitising small parts of the collection, because as you understand, with nearly 2 million specimens in the collection, it would be an absolutely massive and almost impossible task to photograph them all. We are photographing the holotype collections, which are the first described specimens which named the species, and we hold about 8,500 of those. We organise all of the collection taxonomically, so families of the same order and the same group and the same genus are all stored together. We identify those ones that are holotypes by keeping them in these red boxes here. And so these would be the specimen that the scientist used to describe the species, and that became the definition of that species. So Abantiatus marquitus, this was the very first one that was described, and its characteristics, its colouring, the shape of its feet and antennae and things like that actually define the species. And that's one of the reasons that we keep the collection, is so that future entomologists and scientists can compare new species to the ones that have previously been described. We have specimens that are around 150 years old and a bit more. The museum itself has been operating for 150 years, so we've had entomologists and collections managers and scientists working here and collecting for that entire period of time. But we also have collections which have been donated to the museum, so scientists who were working in South Australia prior to the opening of the museum have donated their collections, and we look after them. There's such diversity that if you go to particularly somewhere like a rainforest, the beetles that are on one particular tree can be very different from the beetles that are on a tree 20 metres down the road. So there's huge amounts of diversity, and they are very responsive to changes in their environment. And yeah, because they live fairly short periods of time, the generations of insects go through quite quickly, and evolutionary change happens really very quickly. They are a record of the species that lived in South Australia over a long period of time. They can be an indicator of climate change, they can be an indicator of the change of the environment. With the introduction of farming, there were a lot of species that were wiped out, and one of the roles that the museum plays is keeping that knowledge of what species were in an area over hundreds of years. And we have this is our invertebrate collection, but we've also got herpetology collections, bird collections, mammals collections, which show the way that the nature of South Australia has changed over time, and particularly over the time since European settlement. So, and there's been massive changes in the kind of animals that you find around the country.